because the Freemasonry thing is what is popping. Because they have conned us out of our own genetics. They got us thinking that we need them. And these times will let you see how real that is. Understand? Because they know that everything was from the beginning was trafficked through the woman. Once they got the black woman to accept the welfare system, food stamp system, where she would then negate the man being a part of the family, she put herself directly as a ward under the World Health Organization. If you don't believe me, look at your mother's birth certificate or your birth certificate and see if there's a WHO endorsement on it. And that was the system that was then integrated to stop us from being self-sufficient. And that is the system that was instituted by people like Joe Biden, people like Hillary Clinton, all of the so-called Democrats and Republicans. They're both equally as devil. But now that Trump flipped the treasury and all of that, we got to find out exactly who is actually now the backing aspect of the bond. In my opinion, now it is the Republic, because now it's gold and silver. Remember? China just made its joint the world reserve currency, which means within 50 years, China's not going to exist. China's going to be exactly where the United States is right now. When Britain made the sterling its world reserve currency, Britain fell. United States made the dollar the world reserve currency, United States fell. It's just how it is. So, where that leaves people like us who are actually of the original ilk and of the original understanding that we have never been from anywhere else but here. All we need to do now is consolidate our base as our community of the original constituents of the Republic, because that's what it's all going back to. And what you see now are demonstrations against that being perpetuated by so-called black liberals and black Freemasonic Satanists. See, everybody thinks in the zombie movies, the zombies are the bad guys. But the zombies represent those who have already accepted their fate, that they are totally ignorant. And the only way that they can come up with that ignorance is by devouring an intelligence that's greater than theirs. Therefore, the zombie is the one that's in its proper nature. The person trying to resist the zombie is actually the one that's forestalling the inevitable. So I'm not saying let the zombies come eat your brains. What I am saying is that whenever we look at those movies, we always look at it from the perspective of being the good guy. But you can't be a good guy in an apocalypse. You have to be whatever the situation called for. Worry about the morality later. Did you know in 1977, the National Institute of Anthropology and History of Mexico excavated the ancient Mayan city of Calamacalco, Mexico? What's so fascinating about the Calacalco is that not only the fact that the city was built entirely from mud brick within the inscriptions of the Mayan language on them, but that hundreds of the bricks were found to have inscriptions in Arabic, Moravic, Kufic, which is Egyptian, Phoenician, and ancient Chinese. It's the Moorish Empire. Because all of those nations are the nations of the Moors. The Chinese is Tartary. That connects us back to ancient Thrace, which connects us back to ancient Turin, which connects us back to ancient Egypt, right? Phoenicia, we know that's ancient Canaan, that's Carthage, that's Etrusca, that's the Levant, that's the Latinum, right? That's the Moors. Egyptian, that's needless to say, that's Tamaray and all of that. The Murabic now, that's us. Punic, Iberian, whatever. Yes. There's another image of him showing you both types of the Moors. The eels and the Beys. Look, the red house, the blue house. But look what he holding higher. Look what he holding higher. Right. We're supposed to be rejoicing at the current events. We don't have no problem. I don't have no problem with these people looting. Whatever they want to do, let them do it, man. It's what they're supposed to be doing. If they didn't do it, there'd be more murders, right? So now, every murder that stack up from now, you understand what happens now? This ups the ante on them. The people doing all of the killing is the Caucasian people. How black people killing more Caucasian people in the world when there's allegedly less black people? How are they killing, if white people are the majority and black people the minority, how are black people killing more white people than black? It don't make sense. The majority of white, when the majority of white folk globally are killing everybody. While all of this is happening, like I'm telling you, everything is beautiful. Things are just booming for us as people. Right here, these three children right here are the smartest children, bona fide three smartest children in the entire world. They say that there's no three children that's smarter than these three right here. I don't want to say their name, put them out there, but this is, you can look it up online. They have scored higher than any other child on the planet on every test. So you see why they need the vaccination popping. You see why they need the corona popping. You see why they need the race war popping. So if they want, if they doing what they doing, they're gonna do that. But what I like is that this is the first time in history where I've actually seen somebody actually make a distinction, and black people themselves make a distinction as to who amongst them is doing all of the fighting and the horrible stuff. Remember, we just read that thing about them being Chinese, right? Look at the ancient Chinese. This is what Chinese people look like prior to the socialists and the Jesuit socialists, Mao Zedong taking over. Remember they talked to you about the first Korean War, the war in Korea? Remember that? Well, this is the Koreans. Korean prisoners captured during the first Korean War about 1868. Note their near black complexions, evidence that Asia was once a cauldron of black-skinned humanity. Sheikh Anta Diop quoted earlier, and asserts that the present Chinese type developed from about 17,000 years ago. But these must have still been essentially all black, dark skin, retaining their pigment long millennia after. The photos below were taken over not very dark-skinned Chinese boxer captives. Remember you read about the Boxer Rebellion against Britain in China? All of those were Asiatic martial artists, devotees of Bodhidharma, the god of martial arts, who was a black man from India, what they call Hindustan now. Well, India now. Look, note the very dark-skinned Chinese boxer captives and the other dark-skinned Chinese. Most from Asia or Burma, which is now Myanmar, Cambodia, Southeast Asia in general had similar pigmentation types, not to forget the predominantly black-skinned populations of Borneo, New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, and the Western Pacific. And look right now at what's happening to all of the Moors in West Papua New Guinea. The genocide that's still going on. They fighting against the police. all Asiatics. So again, in clarifying, this is why it's so important that we knew where we're from. And when we say Asiatic, what we really talking about? We're not talking about China today. We're not talking about none of that today. We're talking about what it always is. Because when all of those places passed away, they all exist within our blood, our bloodline that we carry with us. So we got the ancient nobility of all the original ancients of the planet, which is why we're the most hated, because we civilized all of them. The destruction of West African civilization. This is another quote to show and prove that we had our own thing popping. Just from the book, get this book, Three Nations, Three Views, the Ontario Indian, right? This is a compressed point where it basically says C.N. Atchison, in the compressed view, this is a paper you could get, a compressed view of the points to be discussed in the treating with the United States of America of 1814. This is from Canada, from this book, Three Nations, Three Ways. The ceded country was inhabited by numerous tribes and nations of Indians who were independent of both of us and the Americans, meaning the original Americans, the original Moors that was already here. They were the real proprietors of the land, and we had no right to transfer to others what did not belong to ourselves. This injustice was greatly aggravated by the consideration that those aboriginal nations had been our faithful allies during the whole of the contest, yet no stipulation was made in their favor. Who do you think they talking about? The ceded country, meaning a country that existed before them and eventually got ceded to these imposters now. And they never gave us the mention. What they did was they concealed it all in Freemasonic teachings and concealed the true birthright of the empire that existed across the world up until, the fall. This is a 19th century bust of Johannes Mortis, who his name was Johannes Dictus Mortis, the governor of Sicily under Emperor Frederick III, the Moor of Germany. After 1250, the apostolic camera, and then he became the Magister Prepostius of Luceria in Italy under Pope Innocent VI. And then that's on your left. On your right is a painting of John Hanson Bay from the Swedish royal family. So this was what the Swedes looked like up and around the time of the Revolutionary War in so-called America. And this is what the Italians and the Latin-speaking Sicilians, then that means, again, everybody that you see that's of the fairer complexion came in during the time of Reconstruction. So the white liberals and the Republican Democrats, you see, they are all under the democratized government, which is fake. That was totally different than these Moors. Look at the sign that he's saying. This is them marching to protect their own land. Look, it's nothing but black people. Look, Can aliens fight Negroes on their own land? Who are the aliens they talking about? Exactly. Because we Americans have a distinct nationality that's based on our ancient Moorish forefathers. You understand? And those Moorish forefathers had forefathers who were ancient Carthaginians. You know what I'm saying? That were ancient uh, Moabites, Canaanites. And we maintained our nations along those lines. And the European nations that came after Rome all came at the behest of us. So at the time that the House of Anjou was founded or came into existence, they were all technically still Romans, even though they had their own kingdoms, like the Kingdom of Croatia and all of that. But these are all European Moors. These are black men and women of means and nobility who are now being persecuted by the more conservative members of their cabinet. So then they leave and come over here and bring their white slaves with them. Then after the revolution in France, a lot of them decide to go back and then leave their houses in the stead of their butlers, these white people that's minding their store for them. And then these white people start to fight for their own freedom. You understand? Against everybody. This is from the Yale Law Journal. Yes. The Nationality Act of 1940 sanctions the distinction between American nationality, including American citizenship, and American nationality devoid of American citizenship. In terms of this statute, American citizenship embraces, in addition to those privileges and or duties which are inherent to American nationality, such as the possibility of diplomatic protection by the United States. You see that? So right there, we have distinguished that the United States is a separate entity from America, and the nationals of the United States established the United States then as a diplomatic agents for them to pay bills or whatever through. Islam, okay? So y'all got that, right? And on the body, such as the possibility of diplomatic relations in the United States, and the body of obligations customarily referred to as permanent allegiance, the existence of those rights, which only a citizen enjoys under the Constitution. However, even recent legislation occasionally uses the term citizen in a wider sense, embracing any American national. Filipinos before the independence of the Philippine Islands are most conspicuously recent specimen of the American non-citizen nationals. It has been suggested that before the special statute made by the American Indian citizens, they should have been considered non-citizen nationals of the United States. Lawyers who act an earlier period of American history, see how we keep going back now. We went from the foreigners to the Indians, now we're going to the original people redesignate. Lawyers who at an earlier period of American history denied to native-born free Negroes the status of American citizens, but nevertheless held them eligible for diplomatic protection of this country. Seem not to have been realized the technical possibility of construing their status as that of what? Non-citizen nationals. Although with regard to the declarant alien or aliens with the first papers. The prevailing opinion seems to be that the declarant aliens are not American nationals, since it has been settled that they are not within this country's diplomatic protection. And those anomalies which previously singled out their conditions from that other aliens no longer exist. See that? That falls under US Section 8, USC 1408 of the Immigration Act. We are non-U.S. citizen nationals or American non-U.S. citizen nationals because we existed before the country and we have allegiance to the original republic that was founded in 322 BC. Islam. That's why the prophet said when the European got here, he found Moors living up and down the Mississippi River. And this document in stone is the legal proof. This stone is the cornerstone of the American Republic. That's why they call it the born stone. Like when they say born on the 4th of July. In Casacamacumet, where the original Hannibal Bay the Great of the Lion Barker family laid the foundation and then built all the great, helped build all the great monuments and all of that and refortify the ones that was already here from the ancient world. But it's based on this. See the same structure? It's here in America. Remember they said it was 360 idols in the original Carpe, right? Found underneath the stairway along the eastern face indicates that the stairway was a latter addition and that the niches on the original structure, not counting those, were the latest stowaway, a total of 365 for the solar year. Yeah, and due to the rise of this type of intelligence, has put a lot of great researchers out there. People I don't even know. I just be looking up one thing and then I'll just go into the image section of Google and it just be all of this stuff like, oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. So the cross that you see Jesus put on is actually the white Caesar Borgia or the white Christ that was put on the cross of the four corners of the world, being that he was the global slave. And through his blood, they rose up to crush us. So this is also the cross of Tammuz, the original Coptic cross, or the cross that the Pope has, but they flipped it and put a black man on it now. That's why they all have to go. So again, Texas is Texas, or Texas, or Tejas, but it's the same. It's ancient Egypt, ancient Mauritania, ancient Andalusia, ancient Granada. All right? So anybody wants to hit me up about anything else or whatever, just do so at houseofl@hotmail.com, and then we'll take it from there. Islam. I think so. Peace.